Good morning, and welcome to All People's Church, Unitarian Universalist. My name is Marianne Clark, and I'm your co-celebrant this morning. In the pulpit this morning is Reverend Laura Brandis. Reverend Brandis spends most of her time right now as Nana or Nanny to her 22-month-old twin grandchildren, Rose and James. She also works part-time as an on-call hospital chaplain and as the part-time Faith Forward coordinator for First Unitarian Church of Dallas. And I think you must use a time turner. Laura is currently enrolled in the Spiritual Direction Formation and Certification Program of the Meadville Lombard Theological School's Leadership Institute of Growth, Healing, and Transformation, aka LIGHT. Laura previously served congregations in Utah, Idaho, and California. Most recently, she was the settled minister for Horizon UU Church in Carrollton, Texas from 2016 to 2021. Our Sunday service is a shared time of worship for all present as we gather for music, spoken words, a time of reflection and inspiration as a religious community. Let us come together in a spirit of compassion and respect for ourselves and others attending this service. We especially welcome those of you who are visiting today. If you haven't yet done so, please sign in at the visitors table by the front door, where you can be placed on our mailing list to receive the weekly emails and the monthly newsletters. Before we continue on to worship, there are some announcements. And I think somebody might have put a second one on the book out by the table. So somebody can pick that up. Sarah, that'd be great. Okay, so next weekend, the Saturday Banned Books Camp. Perfect for the sermon today. Banned Books Camp for youth and young adults, or anybody who wants to help. From 11 to 4, lunch will be provided. Tell your friends. And Sunday, the RE hour at 9:45 will be the All People's Convention. I think it's like Star Trek, right, Sarah? All People's Con. So, and I don't know, okay, Theoretically, there's another announcement, but I'll pick it up when I do the other thing. So at this time, our wonderful pianist will play us in.
Our call to worship is responsive reading number 715 in the Gray Hymnal, and it might be up here. Oh, nope. We're going to go with turning to the back of the Gray Hymnal, and we're going to read together the words of Khalil Gibran. Your children are not, well, your children. 7:15. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and bends you with might, that the arrows may go swift and far.
We now invite you to rise in body or spirit for the chalice lighting, the opening hymn, and the spoken affirmation. Our chalice lighting words this morning come to us from the Oberlin UU Fellowship in Ohio. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for one another, and faith in ourselves. Also to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together. Please join now in singing our opening hymn, number 21 in the Gray Hymnal, For the Beauty of the Earth. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another.
So do the young and young at heart want to come forward for... Actually, it's a poem. It's not a story this morning. It's a poem. So you might have heard this poem before. It's called "The Hill We Climb" by Amanda Gorman. Have you heard it before? No? Oh, good. Well, then I'm going to read you some of it, just some of it, because I want to encourage everyone to go out now and get your own copy. Because I think it was at the end of May, in one school in Florida, one person complained about the content of this poem that was written and read by Amanda Gorman at the inauguration of our president, President Biden, in January of 2021. Now, what they did with this book is they put it on restricted access at the elementary school in Florida. And after people heard about it, suddenly this was a bestseller on Amazon. So I think that we should keep that trend up and keep buying copies, as many as we can. So I'm just going to read parts of it so that you can go and read or listen to the whole thing when you get the chance. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. And the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is hours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country in a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but this doesn't mean we're striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose. To compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so that we can reach our arms out to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade. The hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. And that's just a part of that beautiful poem that I encourage you all to listen to or read when you get the chance. Okay? Okay. And so now we sing, and what do we sing? Someone tell me. It's up there behind me? Oh, well then you know. That's the chalice. Yeah. Let me light it. You want to go, Miss Sarah? Do you know Miss Sarah?
Isn't it fun to actually have children in the congregation? The offertory words today are by Victoria Weinstein. The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather there to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of the world's faith traditions. To bring the human closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its many ministries. It is our custom to share the undesignated cash offerings that are collected each week. We do this on a quarterly basis for a nonprofit or charitable organization. Our current Share the Plate recipient is the East Side Community Assistance. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. Will the ushers please come forward?
The reading is from the book, The Gardener and the Carpenter: What the New Science of Child Development Tells Us About the Relationship Between Parents and Children, by Alison Gopnik. Being a caregiver who is a stable and reliable resource for learning is more valuable than being a caregiver who explicitly teaches. In the attachment studies, we saw that children recruit information and learn differently depending on who the person is and how they feel about them. Fundamental relationships of trust are more important than teaching strategies. If imitation is like a pas de deux, conversation is like a duet. Studies show the fine-grained play, the back and forth, the call and response of even simple conversations over picture books. It is true, of course, that sometimes we use language to purposefully convey particular information, both to children and to adults. But more often, both for adults and children, conversation is a way of establishing a relationship, a way of being with another person. There is no surer sign of love than the back and forth of teasing and banter, diminutives and endearments, soul-searching, and chit-chat. There is no signal of a failed intimacy more devastating than refusing to talk to the other person. Children learn by being part of that kind of intimate, open-ended, dynamic conversation. Just as children can learn from observing and imitating many different kinds of people with different skills, so children learn about the world around them by listening to many different kinds of people, talking about many different kinds of things in different kinds of ways. Paradoxically, even hearing inaccurate or misleading information can help children learn. They learn not only what someone has said, but how reliable they are and how much to trust them in the future. Giving children the chance to intimately observe what many different people do is the best way to help them learn by looking. Giving children the chance to talk with many different people is the best way to help them learn by listening. The words of Alison Gopnik. And if you'll rise now in body or in spirit and join us in singing hymn number 301, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky. We're going to sing verses 1, 2, and 3 only.
Pause to honor and to give time and attention to those things most important to us. We gather here for healing and for peace in our hearts, and to honor our time together with shared stories and news from the congregation. Each week, there is a journal outside the entrance to the sanctuary where you can write a message of memory or hope before the service. Also, at any time during the service, you are welcome to come forward and light a candle in the meditation center here at the side of the chancel. Today, from our book of memory and hope, we include the following happy news. Jane and Tony Collins are celebrating their 40th anniversary today. They got married at the First UU Church in Houston in 1983. And Roy Redmond's son, Robert Redmond, and Dragana Redmond's first year wedding anniversary. What a wonderful pair of bookends. Let us open our mind and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain, and the soft, gentle coming of love. Please now settle comfortably and pause for a few moments of quiet meditation to hold and uplift the sorrows and celebrations, both spoken and unspoken, among us. And then Misha will lift our hearts with music.
So it is actually a coincidence that I decided to name this sermon Reading Banned Books to My Grandchildren. I really didn't know you were having this summer camp coming up next week. I didn't know until yesterday. I went, wow. I will tell you, I wanted to have for my subject matter, they say, write what you know. Well, I know my twin grandchildren right now. And, what could I write about 22-month-olds that would be worthy of a sermon? And I started thinking about, well, what would I say to them? What would I say to them being alive in this world right now? What is it that I want them to know? What a great sort of responsibility they have in this world. So I decided I would talk about reading banned books to them, and there was my topic. So I spend a lot of time with them, my youngest grandchildren, 22-month-old twins, Rose and James. Both my daughter and her husband work from home, and I am there every Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. There is nothing better than walking into their house and hearing a chorus of Nana greet me each day. I often wonder if I may have missed my calling as a children's entertainer, though, because I know all the songs. The ones I sang to my children, and now the ones I sang as a child, some of them different, and now the ones I'm learning when I tell Alexa to select a mix from Baby Music, Sesame Street, The Muppets, and Raffi. We sing, we dance, and do all the motions. Wheels on the Bus is a popular one. We also read a lot of books. I am proud that we are a family of readers. The twins' bookshelf is filled with books given to them as gifts and books that were my daughter's books growing up. We are teaching them to respect books. We don't tear the pages. We don't throw books. We don't write in books. This is hard for them to learn. Several books have had to go out of circulation for a few days while they were being repaired. The twins were infants when I started taking care of them. I didn't think of myself as one of their teachers. I was just a grateful grandmother who got to hold a baby while it slept. As they get ready to start a Parents' Day Out program in September, I'm feeling the pressure to prepare them for the world. Not ready for the entire world, of course. I'm aware that 2 days a week at a Methodist church for Parents' Day Out is not the world, with all of its influences that are out of our control. I am more concerned about them being understood for who we've helped shape them to be so far. Will the caregivers understand when Rose points at the letter H and says, "Nay," which is horse, of course, right? Nay. Will James be understood when he calls the color green rah-rah, which translates to ribbit ribbit, meaning frog? He would go wild in here with all this green. Alison Gopnik is a professor of psychology and affiliate professor of philosophy at the University of California, Berkeley. In her book, The Gardener and the Carpenter, she proposes a new way to approach parenting. In fact, she rejects the word parenting as it suggests that, like a carpenter, parents are responsible for shaping a child into a final product. Instead, she prefers the metaphor of tending a garden. Gardening can be risky, she acknowledges, but ultimately our responsibility as parents, grandparents, and caregivers is to provide safe places where risks can be taken. She writes, quoting, "Being a caregiver who is a stable and reliable resource for learning is more valuable than being a caregiver who explicitly teaches. Fundamental relationships of trust are more important than teaching strategies." She also writes, "Our job is not to shape our children's minds. It's to let those minds explore all the possibilities the world allows." The second annual Moms for Liberty Summit was recently held in Philadelphia. You may or may not be familiar with this parental rights group. Their mission, as stated on their website, Moms for Liberty is dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. The Southern Poverty Law Center put Moms for Liberty and other organizations like it on its list of anti-government extremist entities. They compare these hang on. They compare these groups to parent groups that arose in response to the 1954 Supreme Court decision, that these groups that arose in response to that decision, Brown v. Board of Education. Those parent groups attempted to resegregate schools during the civil rights era. Today's parent groups want to ban certain books, limit discussion about race and LGBTQ identities, and control who serves on local school boards. You may or may not be familiar with Moms for Liberty, but you will be hearing more about them as the 2024 election gets closer. They are the largest of the new parental rights groups. Their political clout is growing, as evidenced by the presence of 3 leading candidates for the Republican presidential nomination at their recent summit. The group was founded only 2 years ago by Florida mothers fighting school closures, mask mandates, and vaccine mandates during the global pandemic. They have risen quickly with support by other conservative groups tied with Christian nationalism. Writing for Religion Dispatches, Annika Brockschmidt says, "The religious character of the summit was overwhelming. So many prayers, invocations, and explicit, as well as implicit, references to a spiritual war. If this is a spiritual war, then we better get ready. I'm getting ready by reading banned books to my grandchildren." Now, I didn't know I was reading banned books to my grandchildren already. But when I received a text message from Moms for Liberty, asking me to help them stand against indoctrinating children with LGBTQ propaganda and racist ideology, I thought I'd better learn more. I don't know how they got my phone number, but I'm glad they did, because now I can be better prepared for spiritual warfare. I can be better educated about the books I have already read to my grandchildren and the ones I want to make sure we add to their library. The American Library Association recently reported that attempts to ban books nearly doubled between 2021 and 2022. Last year, they tracked 1,269 attempts to remove targeted books from public libraries and schools. This is the largest number of complaints since the organization began tracking censorship efforts more than 20 years ago. Most of these complaints come from what one report called a minuscule number of hyperactive adults. The rest of the complaints come from organized conservative parent groups like Moms for Liberty. Now, in case you're wondering which books to keep on your shelves, here are some suggestions from my grandchildren. Hop on Pop by Dr. Seuss. Now, this was complained about in 2014. Some of these on my list have some history behind them, and they may not be currently on a banned list. But some of these I find interesting because Hop on Pop, the copy we have was my daughter's copy. It was one of her favorites. But this was challenged by a Toronto father's rights advocate. He challenged it in 2014, saying he wanted it pulled from library shelves because it encouraged children to use violence against their fathers. Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. Now, I haven't read this to them yet, but it is on the shelf. In 1986, the West Allis, Milwaukee School District banned this poetry collection because of drug reference, suicide, death, and a disrespect for truth and authority. Shortly after, a school district in Pennsylvania did the same. Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. Now, when this classic was published in 1963, it caused quite a stir. Banned in many southern states for depicting child abuse. You might remember that Max has to go to bed without his supper. It's also been challenged for being too dark and showing supernatural elements. And Tango Makes Three by Justin Richardson and Peter Parnell. I haven't read this to the twins yet, but I did read it to our older grandchild. It is currently banned in 3 school districts in Florida and 1 in Pennsylvania for depicting a relationship between 2 male penguins. It's true. So. Brown Bear, What Do You See by Bill Martin. Now that's a weird one. That really, I thought, wait, what? That's a great, do you know that the book, it teaches colors? And I remember this when both my daughters learned it in kindergarten to make sure, they knew their colors. And we love this book in my house. We read it all the time. Now, this is an interesting one, but again, points up the fact that some of this banning comes from the loudest voice in the room. So this is more of a case of mistaken identity than concern over content, thank goodness. It was banned by the Texas State Board of Education in 2010. It turns out that the children's author has the same name as someone who wrote Ethical Marxism, the Categorical Imperative of Liberation. Makes you kind of want to read that book. It is not currently banned in Texas. And then Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram X. Kendi. We have this on our shelf. I don't know if it was a gift or if we bought it on purpose. I'm sure either one. This is banned in 1 school district in Florida, according to the PEN America Index of School Book Bans. And if you want to do a deep dive on this, go to PEN America. They index this every year and show the growing number of books. And you can pull up your own school district and see what has been banned. Yes, some of these are ridiculous, and some of these are alarming. What's not on the list, and as my twins get older, I'm sure we will get more on the list, are the ones LGBTQ focused. Who is most at risk right now? Are trans children. And that's where most of this banning is being focused. Also on race issues and false accusations of critical race theory being taught in our schools. The thing that is most alarming is how one fearful parent can limit access to a book for an entire school or school district. That's the case with The Hill We Climb, the 2021 presidential inaugural poem written by Amanda Gorman. And now we own it. Now, the twins are a little young for it, but I will read it to them someday. At the end of this school year, end of May, I think, the book was placed on restricted access at a K-8 school in Miami-Dade County, Florida. This happened following a complaint from one parent who said that the poem, along with 3 other books not by Gorman, were inappropriate for students and should be removed. The formal written protest, which you can see, it's all over the internet, in which the parent confuses Gorman with Oprah, who, well, Oprah did write the introduction to the book. This parent noted that the hill we climb, and this is a direct quote, the hill we climb is not educational and have indirectly hate messages. The parent who complained referenced pages 12 and 13 in the book, which I read this morning, and I'll repeat it for you. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet, the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow, we do it. Somehow, we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. In response to the restricted access to her poem, Amanda Gorman tweeted about the rise in book banning noted by the American Library Association. She said, "Let's be clear. Most of the forbidden works are by authors who have struggled for generations to get on bookshelves. The majority of these censored works are by queer and non-white voices. I wrote The Hill We Climb so that all young people could see themselves in a historical moment. Ever since, I've received countless letters and videos from children inspired by The Hill We Climb to write their own poems. I will teach my grandchildren that our nation isn't broken. It is simply unfinished. I will continue to read them banned books, knowing that I will have to do more than just read them banned books. If this is a spiritual war, then we will all have to do more than just read banned books. We can't just reject the apocalyptic nature of their rhetoric. We must counter it with our own religious language of love. They may call us enemies of God. We will say we are lovers of humanity. They may say that we indoctrinate children. We will say that we provide safe spaces for lifelong learning. They will say we are purveyors of porn. They will say this, it's one of their tactics. We will remind them of the love of neighbor and love of self. I'm feeling the pressure to prepare my children for the world. My children, and I meant to say grandchildren. Isn't that something? I imagine it is the same pressure the parent who complained about the hill we climb felt. I imagine it is the same pressure members of Moms for Liberty feel. I sometimes feel fear for my grandchildren, fear that they will inevitably know pain and disappointment. The parental pledge on the Moms for Liberty website includes defending against government overreach and securing parental rights at all levels of government. Here's my promise as a warrior of the Spirit. I will not project my fear onto others. I will not stir up fear and hatred to control what cannot be controlled. Tending a garden is risky. Raising children is messy. Reading banned books to my grandchildren is a joy. Watching young minds explore the possibilities that the world has to offer is a privilege. It is also a reminder that every child deserves safe places where risks can be taken. every child. Every child. Every child. May it be so, and amen. Please now rise in body or in spirit for our closing hymn, number 354 in the gray hymnal, and also up here, We Laugh, We Cry.
Our chalice extinguishing words come to us from Amy Zucker Morgenstern. Never has it been more true than now. We extinguish this flame, but the sparks within us remain alight. From each of us in our supposed solitude, the signals buzz and hum, sparkling through space one to another, connecting us invisibly but palpably. We are one.
Shine your light, my friends. If a spiritual war is coming, their words, not ours, we need to shine our light. We need to shine this light from this place, from this our beloved faith. Shine your light. Please. Go in peace. Blessed be, and amen. And join us for food in the library that is magically revealing itself.